we've heard from both President Biden as well as his top officials that there is not a plan right now for U.S. troops to get involved militarily.
Right.
Now they have people on the ground helping in advisory roles, and the U.S. has moved 2 Navy strike carrier groups into the region, which is a pretty strong sign of force and show of support. And we've heard from the U.S. That the reason they've done this is not necessarily to help Israel defeat Hamas, but it's to ensure that no other anti-Israel adversary gets involved right now. And so that could be Hezbollah, which is a more sophisticated terror group than Hamas that's based in Lebanon.
Right.
And both have support from Iran, which could also get involved, which would be a significant escalation.
Welcome to Reporter's Notebook, where we talk to the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the stories breaking on their beats. I'm Jim Antle. I'm joined today by defense reporter Mike Brest. Mike, we've had this situation in Israel unfolding, the Hamas attack. There's been this controversy that's really been sort of at the center of all our coverage of this over an alleged hospital bombing. And there's been a lot of back and forth about that. Talk us through what we actually know now.
So at this point, we are about 48 hours removed from this bombing, this explosion that occurred at a Gaza hospital. In the immediate aftermath, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization but also is the governing body of the Gaza Strip, came out and said this strike, it was an Israeli strike and that hundreds of people died.
Right.
The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, came out and said, we're going to do an immediate investigation and we'll get back to you. By the time their investigation concluded, and it was only a matter of hours, there had already been significant blame placed upon them for this strike. We saw
the Israeli government.
Right. We saw news organizations follow that Hamas talking point or allegation that it was an Israeli strike that resulted in the deaths of hundreds, specifically civilians, at a hospital. The IDF, when they came out with the results of their investigation, they found this wasn't one of their strikes. They were able to identify all of their strikes that they had conducted in that time frame, and this matched none of them. They also found that this strike they attributed to a smaller terror group based in Gaza called the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Now, they work closely with Hamas, but there's some differences. And so the IDF found that Islamic Jihad fired a barrage of rockets from Gaza into Israel. And they were doing it from a location where the hospital was between where they were firing from and Israel. And so you can see on video that's since come out, one of these rockets looks like it fails to launch properly and falls out of the sky. The IDF also confirmed, and we could see pictures of it the next day, that when the rocket fell, it didn't actually land on the hospital, but landed in the hospital parking lot. And so the IDF, they say they have a responsibility to fact check, to do their due diligence, and to then come to the press and tell them what they've uncovered. Whereas what we saw happen in this example was a number of outlets report what Hamas said without waiting for this Israeli investigation. Now, we've also seen President Biden and his National Security Council confirm, based on the evidence that they've seen, that this wasn't an Israeli strike.
Right.
And so there have also been questions as to whether or not Hamas exaggerated the death toll, but that one is a little bit trickier to figure out.
So this is sort of a preview, however, of what will happen as an offensive in Gaza is launched, that there will be a lot of claims made about the civilian casualties. There'll be counterclaims made. Hamas is going to engage in some degree of a propaganda war. What exactly are Israel's plans currently for the Gaza Strip as they try to respond to the Hamas attacks on their territory?
So Israel and top Israeli officials, both Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and top military officials, have said that their goal is to make sure, is to essentially remove Hamas from the Gaza Strip. They plan on wiping out the Hamas infrastructure that they've spent years building as a result of this attack, because if you ask Israeli leaders, it's no longer a tenable option for Hamas to be the governing body next to them, at least as long as they have a capacity or a capability to launch attacks against Israel.
And I mean, this attack, when you factor in the size of Israel's population, was of an order of magnitude worse than 9/11 was in the United States.
Absolutely. This attack was the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust. So this was the deadliest terror attack in Israel's 75-year history. This was, Israel's 9/11. And so, as the U.S. felt at, the time of 2001, Israel no longer believes it's a tenable situation to have Hamas next to them.
Right.
So they intend to, even though they haven't yet, they intend to go into Gaza and clear out Hamas. And it's going to be a long, protracted battle.
Right.
It's not going to be easy. Hamas has dedicated millions of dollars of humanitarian aid into building up an infrastructure for their terror operations. They have what an IDF spokesperson told me was essentially a metro underneath Gaza City without any metro cars. It's designed for them to be able to move across Gaza without fear of being targeted in an Israeli strike. It's where they hide their weapons.
Right.
And so all of this is beneath one of the most densely populated places in the world.
Right.
And the reason Hamas has set it up this way is because if Israel is to go after them, it's inevitable that there will be collateral damage, which, as you mentioned, Hamas will be able to use to further their agenda, their narrative, their propaganda war. And so Israel right now is taking its time to adequately prepare themselves and the troops for them to go in, because this is not going to be simple. We'll see, this conflict could play out over weeks or months, if not longer. And we'll see Israeli forces move into the city, and we'll see Hamas terrorists pop up from the tunnels. And we've seen reports in the New York Times that Hamas plans on sort of surprising them from behind once Israeli forces move into Gaza.
What's the U.S. role? I mean, President Biden has indicated a lot of support for Israel. There's been some pledges of aid. What are we planning to do?
So we've heard from both President Biden as well as his top officials that there is not a plan right now for U.S. troops to get involved militarily.
Right.
Now they have people on the ground helping in advisory roles, and the U.S. has moved 2 Navy strike carrier groups into the region, which is a pretty strong sign of force and show of support. And we've heard from the U.S. That the reason they've done this is not necessarily to help Israel defeat Hamas, but it's to ensure that no other anti-Israel adversary gets involved right now. And so that could be Hezbollah, which is a more sophisticated terror group than Hamas that's based in Lebanon.
Right.
And both have support from Iran, which could also get involved, which would be a significant escalation.
Thank you, Mike. You can read Mike and the rest of our national security team's coverage at washingtonexaminer.com.